Let's try to write some programs. So the problem statement given is scores for 5 courses are entered at runtime. Calculate. How would you solve this problem, or how would you write a program to solve this problem? Now, before you start putting up everything in your C compiler or in the IDE, so before you start coding, you first need to make a plan as to how you would approach this. The first step would always be to declare the variables. Now I know that there are 5 courses and scores for these 5 courses are going to be entered. I'm going to assume that my first course score will be stored in S1, second course score will be stored in S2, the third course score will be stored in S3, S4 and S5. I know that I'm being asked to calculate the total and the average. My total will be stored, or the sum of the scores will be stored in a variable called total, and the average of the scores will be stored in a variable called average. These are the variables that my program requires. Establish this in the first place. The next step is to assign the values to these variables. For this, you need to look at the question more carefully. It says here that the scores are entered at runtime, which means that you have to use scanf, because scanf can be used to read the values into variables at runtime. Step number 3 would be to compute the total. You may display the result. Step 5 would be to compute the average, and step 6 would be to display the result. Or you could do compute total, compute average, and then display results, both the results. Always form a clear plan before you start coding. You know that to compute the total, the statement would be total equals S1 plus S2 plus S3 plus S4 plus S5, and to compute the average, it would be total divided by 5. If the program specification says all my variables should be in integers, then this works out. And if it says my average should be in float, you would go for total over 5.0. It depends upon what data types do you assign for S1, S2, S3, S4, S5, total and average. Totally depends on that. The next step is to write the code.